Welcome to Peace Now. My name is Trudy Quaife. I'm a member of Bethlehem Neighbors for Peace. We're a local organization of friends and neighbors. We've been advocating for peace and justice for well over a decade. And I'm your host today, and I'm joined by Terri Roben.
Hi,
Thank
Trudy.
you for being here, Terri.
Thanks for having me.
Terri's a local peace activist, environmental activist, and a wonderful musician. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks.
So let's start out with a little background, Terri. Could you tell us a little bit about how you became an activist?
Well, I really grew up in a family of, I guess, sort of activists. My mother, my parents worked in the Manhattan Project in Oak Ridge. That's how they met. So that was a top secret project, and I think that made them interested in politics for their whole lives, and keeping up with current events and things. So we always had to watch the news and stuff. And my mother was one of the handful of women in Schenectady that started the Mothers for Peace Vigil in Veterans Park way back in 1967. And so I was there. That was my first demonstration, or it was a vigil, really. I also went with her on picket lines in front of grocery stores for the boycotting lettuce and grapes for the United Farm Workers when I was a little kid. So, I sort of grew up with it. And when I started to sing and play guitar, people started asking me to sing at these rallies and demonstrations, and I had already been a member. I also started going to the clergy and laity concerned meetings at our church, which were about, anti-war or peace things. So, I was already into all that, and I knew a lot of people, so they kept calling me about coming to different things. I was 14 when I started doing that.
Wow. Well, okay. What are some of the issues you're concerned about today?
Well, I'm concerned about all of the issues that we're facing. I think climate change is probably the most important one because we all live on this planet, and we need the air, we need the water, we need everything to work so that we can survive, and our children and future generations. So that's huge. I mean, war is probably the second worst thing that people do on the planet, but I think environmental degradation is probably the first. And I also am really concerned about younger generations taking over our work that we've been doing all our lives, and hopefully, there will be enough people in their 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s to step up, and as we're all getting tired and we won't be here forever. Women's rights are really important to me, as a woman particularly. And I have a daughter, so I want the women in America and in the country, in the whole world, to be liberated.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, we're going to get to the music here in a minute, but let's talk a little bit about some of the performers that have influenced you. And you're a songwriter and a performer. What are some of the other musicians that have influenced you, or activists?
Well, I grew up. My older sister is 7 years older than me, so she was in college during the mid '60s. She was bringing back people that upstate New Yorkers hadn't even heard yet, that she was hearing in college. Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell, Judy Collins, Carole King, James Taylor. But when I found out about Holly Near in 1973, when I was 18, that really made me inspired. And of course, Pete Seeger, I'd gone to some of his, I'd grown up hearing his recordings. I really hadn't gone to a concert of his until probably I was 19 or 20 even. But, and then I started working at the Clearwater Festival. But, and of course, Pat Humphries and all those guys, people that I met through music organizations and that were also activists and stuff.
Now, have you performed with Pete Seeger?
Yeah, I've been really lucky to have been able to do that. Only once in a official way. They asked me to sing with him at the statewide labor rally at the Capitol many years ago. I think it was in the early 80s. John Kutro, another Albanian, also sang with us, so that was a big thrill. But I've also spent time with Pete Seeger at Children's Music Network and People's Music Network organization conferences, and even peeling potatoes with him, because everybody takes work shifts during these conferences, so that we can all afford to go.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a great guy. He was a great guy, and we all miss him. And it's hard to put him in the past tense. And Toshi was also just an incredible woman. So.
Role models for all of us.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah, yeah. Well, now, what made you decide to combine your activism with your music, or did it just sort of happen?
Yeah, it just happened. I wasn't planning on it at all. You know, I always sang from the time I was, toddling around, I guess, according to my parents. But I was always, and singing to me is just like breathing. When people say, "Oh, I'm so glad to hear you're still singing," it's like, well, I can't imagine not singing. So, and the activism. I mean, I was brought up to be aware of what was going on in the world, and I still am. I can't stick my head in the sand. So the combination of music, and that's what I can do. I can sing. I can sometimes write songs about the issues, and hopefully inspire people, and so that's it.
Okay, now you perform at rallies. I've seen you performing at many rallies. The bomb train rally, recently also the rally opposing war with Iran. But over the years, many, many times you've performed at various different rallies. But I know that you also perform at coffee houses. So what's the difference?
Well, I perform at coffee houses, restaurants, schools, libraries. I do children's music as well. And basically, when you're performing, you're putting yourself out there and hoping that people will like your music, and so it's sort of more of a self-image thing. Whereas when you're leading a rally or a demonstration, or giving support to a picket line or something, you're just trying to get people to unify and sing together and stay warm and have fun and be inspired and keep their spirits up. And so it's much more about the group, whereas when you're a performer, you're just part of that. I mean, certainly I've done plenty of sing-alongs, and especially with kids in coffee houses, festivals, whatever. But if in a coffee house, a bar, a restaurant, where you're trying to project your image and your music, then it's quite different.
I can only imagine. Well, Terri's going to sing a song for us. Could you sing a couple of verses from one of the songs that you've written yourself, and maybe just tell us what the song is and a little about it?
Well, this song is No Such Thing as a Way. I wrote it. It's on my children's album, which is called Riverwalk and Other Songs. And I actually was inspired to write it when I was walking on the dry riverbed in the winter, and I found some garbage, like styrofoam cups, whatever. In the summertime, that would be many, many feet underwater, but it looked like it'd been around forever, which probably had. So, it just made me think, people really don't get that when you throw things away, they don't disappear.
Right.
There is no such thing as a way. And this was, something I've always worked with children, with environmental music particularly, but other times. When you throw it away, do you know where away is? You know it won't stay in that garbage can. It may end up very deep in the water, it may seep, or end up lying on the pretty white sand. 'Cause there's no away in the whole wide world. No, there's no such thing as a way. In the land, sea, or sky, it could end up by plants or creatures, or where people work and play. From the garbage can, it could go to a landfill, or it may get burned up and pollute the sky. It could go out to the ocean on a garbage barge, dumped into the water, making ocean life die. 'Cause there's no such thing in the whole wide world. No, there's no such thing as a way. In the land, sea, or sky, it could end up by plants or creatures, or where people work and play. So we have a few more verses, and then at the end, If you're smart, you'll start to figure out what you really need. You won't buy stuff just because it's there. When you want to get rid of something, you'll try recycling it, keep it from polluting, and show that you care. 'Cause there's no way in the whole wide world, no, there's no such thing as a way. In the land, sea, or sky, it could end up by plants or creatures, or where people work and play. It's an edited version.
Oh, that was just beautiful. I really enjoyed that so much.
And on the CD, I had my daughter's Brownie Troop, part of them, about six-year-olds sang on the chorus with the songs.
Nice.
So it's a nice album.
I forgot to mention, these are a couple of CDs that Terri's done, and there are more, right?
Well, yeah, you can go to CD Baby or whatever, but I have some. I don't think I have any more of these. I think Riverwalk got sold out a couple times, so I think there might be some on Riverwalk, but on CD Baby, but you could probably find some of the songs online anyway nowadays,
Yeah, yeah. Now, how long does it take to write a song like that?
Totally, variable.
Oh, depends on
that
your
song,
inspiration.
I was walking on that riverbed and it just came to me, and by the time I got back to my house, I pretty much had it written. But other times, it can take days, weeks.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have a lot of unwritten or unfinished songs that, sit there and you find them a few years later and you say, gee, that was nice. I should have done something with that. And sometimes I do, so you never know.
Well, there's more music to come. Well, let me ask you a few more questions first. How do you feel about performing with other musicians?
I love it. I'm not very good at it as far as jamming goes because I haven't had a lot of experience jamming. My most of the time I've been performing and playing music out, I've been a soloist, but I did have a duo with another woman for maybe 3 years. We actually made a recording together. It was Terri and Maria, and then I had a duo with Roger Allen, and we played together some out in coffee houses and things for maybe a couple of years there. And then another woman, Mona Hadcock, would come and join us sometimes. Then I had first it was duo, then it was a trio, now it's a band. It's a jazz band of women. So and
Nice.
I love it. It's really fun. It's very broadening to work with other people.
Okay. Well, let me ask you about an organization that's really near and dear to your heart, the People's Music Network. Could you tell us what that is? And what they
People's
do?
Music Network was founded by Charlie King and Pete Seeger as sort of a combination of organizations that they had both started before. One, Charlie King had started Songs of Freedom and Struggle, and Pete Seeger had started People's Music way back in the 50s or 40s maybe. Anyway, so it's called People's Music Network. The link to it is peoplesmusic.org, and it's wonderful. Pete Seeger and Charlie King have always been there. Of course, now Pete's not, but we have an annual winter gathering, and we have an annual summer gathering. People from all over the country, and sometimes Canada and other places come, and we share music, and it's for people. It's a network of people who want to help change the world for the better through music, just like Pete Seeger did, and Charlie King does. And it's not just musicians. There are musicians and performers. There's teachers, librarians, radio show hosts, pretty much anybody that's interested in political music, social justice music. We don't pretend that we're not on the left. We are, just like Pete, and we learn a lot. We have workshops. We have a concert, Friday night concert, and then the rest of the weekend is workshops that we are offered by various people that we learn about all sorts of topics that have to do with music and those issues, those political issues we're all interested in. It's a wonderful organization. It's been around for a long time. It's got a great website, a great email list, and we all learn a lot from each other.
Okay, now, would you say it was more activism or more music?
The People's Music Network?
Yeah.
It's both. You can't really divide it. Some of the people in it are much more active as activists than others, but it's for everybody that wants to use music as a way to educate, as a way to move the world forward, as talk about.
How many people would typically go to one of your conferences?
We usually get 200 or 300 people for the whole weekend. Hopefully the concert's even more, because that's our fundraiser for the weekend. And an outgrowth of People's Music Network is the Children's Music Network, which happened because as a result of some of the original People's Music Network people saying, hey, we do children's music and we should do this for children's musicians too, because it can be very isolating when you're doing this stuff. It's nice to have that networking and support, just like with any other kind of work. So there's Children's Music Network also.
Now, what about, how would non-musicians fit into this conference as well?
Yes. Again, if you're interested in music, if you're just, we have teachers, librarians, historians, people, radio DJs that just, they're not performers, they're not musicians necessarily, but they want to learn about it. They love it. There's so much history with a lot of folk music, a lot of political music. Political music tends to have, a history to it, a story to it, which makes it really, really interesting. It's a lot of it's based on fact,
things
or
that happen,
true history, which is sort of cool.
It is.
When my daughter was little, she grew up, even as a baby, listening to, even children's music that was more about stories or whatever. I remember when she got conscious to the radio music and said to me one day when she was about maybe 4, she goes, "Mommy, why is it that on the radio all they sing about is love, 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 love?" I just thought that was great. I'd never even thought of it myself.
It's true, though, isn't it?
Which is what we sing about in our jazz band. But hey, you got to take a break from politics sometimes.
Well, people always have heartbreak, and
yeah, that's a common. It's something that brings us all together and makes us identify with each other.
Yeah. Well, what would a typical workshop be like at
Well,
one of
I
these
really don't
conferences?
think they're typical. They're all different. I mean, there
Well,
could
give
be
us
a
an
workshop
example.
on women's music,
Okay.
music that's just for women to sing or to share with each other, and then there's a men's song workshop too, or song swap. There's, equal rights for transgender or LGBT. There's anything that people come up with that they want to present, because we have a time period when you can propose a workshop, and if it sounds like something that would work for the conference, we'll say sure, see if you can do it. In particular, hopefully you'll become a member too while you're
Right.
But lots and lots of different things. We had Julius Lester there last year. He was one of the original freedom singers, so he taught us some of the songs that they were singing as they were getting beat by the police way back in the 60s in the South. And we've had all sorts of real inspiring things. We've had songs, Nueva Canción, the new songs of Latin America, which
that's nice.
Colleen Catao and Melanie Perez have done. There are many, many different types of workshops. It's a lot of fun. You can look on the PMN website and check all that out too. That's on that website, past conferences and workshops.
Are you getting more young people involved now?
We're trying. We every year we get a few, but it's hard. It's a different type of thing. Different. It's hard. Young people aren't quite sure about any of that, because it's it's hard to attract people that have anytime that have never been to something. So we try to make the Friday night concert, appealing to all ages and too. So.
Well, I thought about going, but then I thought, well, I'm not really much of a musician, but you've made me feel a lot more comfortable about attending.
Anybody interested in social justice and stuff, I think would find it pretty interesting. And you don't have to go to the whole thing. You can just go to one day of it, whatever. So.
Anything else you'd like to say about the People's Music Network?
Well, if you want any more information and you are curious about those kinds of things, just go to peoplesmusic.org and look at that website. It'll have plenty of information for you.
Okay. Well, let's talk for a minute about Women Against War. I know that's one of the organizations that you're involved with.
Yeah.
Anything you'd like to say about
Well,
that?
I was one of the people that, in the very, very beginning of Women Against War, we had a fast, a 3-month fast at the Women's Building to try to stop the war in Iraq from happening. So I signed up for that, and I was at the original meeting where they discussed that. So that's sort of how I became involved with Women Against War. And, you know, I'm a woman, I'm against war, I'm for peace.
Sound like a good
so,
match.
you know, I turn up as much as I can and try to support them, and Grannies for Peace. And
Grannies for Peace, yeah, another really wonderful organization.
Planned Parenthood, you know, any of these things.
Yeah, and you're also involved with Peace Action and...
Oh yeah, you know, we all are, right?
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
They're all interconnected, like the whole world.
Yeah, and the various different environmental groups in the Capital Region.
Yeah, my husband Pete Looker is very involved with the environmental stuff. Always has been, and so have I. But he was part of the beginning of PAWS, the one for the organization against bomb trains. And
right.
Yeah, so.
Bomb trains, for people that don't know, those are the oil tankers that come through Albany that are parked down right on the edge of 787, carrying that.
Yeah, they're very dangerous.
Flammable.
The most explosive oil in the world, really. And he's also part of 350.org and Bill McKibben's. You know, we've always been involved with all that stuff. Very important.
It is. It's a really important effort, and there's a lot of activism going on in the Capital Region, and
we have a great region for activism.
We do.
We really do.
We do. And so often I see you there playing your music.
Well, you know, we have a great community, just like with PMN. I really am grateful to be part of a community of people who have worked together for years and years and years, and not for money,
right,
but for the right thing.
Yeah, nobody's getting rich doing this work.
As Utah Phillips said too, if you want to be a folk singer and make $1 million, start with $2 million.
Yeah. Well, I think the Capital Region really appreciates all your efforts, Terri.
Well, thank you. I try.
Do you have any ideas of projects for the future, what you'll be working on in the future?
Well, you know, I'm always trying to get more recordings done. Everybody I know is, and you know, I'd like to do another children's recording. I'd like to do a recording with my jazz band. I'd like to do, I'd sort of like to record all the political songs I've written that I have not recorded and that I don't particularly sing all the time, because they do sort of expire at certain times with their topics, but it'd be nice to just get those down. So I'll be probably trying to continue recording for a long time, and my jazz band, and you know, we're constantly trying to find gigs and stuff and learning more about that. That's a very good stretching thing for my voice, for my musicality, for my education. You know, it's great as a musician to learn new styles all the time, and you know, to dive into something new, just like any artist.
Right. And you're still writing songs?
Every now and then. I'm not that prolific, really. I have to get pretty inspired or pretty upset. And also, there's so many good songs out there that I just fall in love with other people's songs and want to learn them.
Yeah.
So.
I heard you sing a Patti Smith song not too long ago.
Yeah.
People have the power. I love it when you sing that song. Oh,
she's incredible too. I was late finding out about her and discovering her, and she's just incredible.
Yeah.
She Democracy Now! Had a whole hour devoted to interviewing with her last week. Yeah, have to look it up. So.
Well, one thing I wanted to say is that every time I watch you perform, you look like somebody who's just found what they love to do, and I so much appreciate that. I just wonder, where do you get your inspiration from?
I think I just get it from everybody around me. You know, my husband, the community of activists in this area. Whenever, you know, when you're at a demonstration or a rally, or even just a dinner like we're having tonight, you know, it's just inspiring to know that there's all these people that you have seen over the years that continue to not give up. So, you know, I just I get inspired by all of us, including you, and you've been out there for a long, long time too, with Bethlehem Neighbors for Peace, and we appreciate your work.
Well, you do a wonderful job, and we're going to end this program with a song that Terri wrote. I just want to thank everybody for joining us, and thank you, Terri. It's been such a pleasure to interview you. I hope you'll come back in the future and play some more songs for us. And thank you all for joining us, and please join us for future shows where we'll be talking about the cost of war.
And this is a song I wrote way back when, actually, I think during the Persian Gulf War is when it started. So. In 1895, my gramps said to his pa, "Oh, Daddy, how could it have been that slavery was law? I can't believe that human beings were bought and sold like steer." My grandpa's father looked at him and said, "I greatly fear Humanity still has a great capacity for hate, forgetting past sins far too soon, remembering too late. I hope and pray that when you're grown you'll have no wars to wage. But if you do, I hope you'll stand for justice and not rage. In 1946, my pa said to my gramps, how could it be the world allowed those concentration camps? So many Jews and others killed, so many children slain. My father's father looked at him and said, let me explain. Humanity still has a great capacity for hate, forgetting past sins far too soon, remembering too late. I hope and pray that when you're grown you'll have no wars to wage. But if you do, I hope you'll stand for justice and not rage. In 1970, I pleaded with my mom, why are so many dying in a place called Vietnam? Why are we bombing villages and people we don't know? My mother looked at me and said, I guess it's time you know. Humanity still has a great capacity for hate, forgetting past sins far too soon, remembering too late. I hope and pray that when you're grown you'll have no wars to wage. But if you do, I hope you'll stand for justice and not rage. In 1991, my child came home from school. He said, hey Dad, let's watch the Persian Gulf War. It's so cool. We watched the replays of the bombs that looked like fireworks. And when they showed the peace marchers, my son said, oh, those jerks. I took my son's face in my hand and looked him in the eyes. It's time you learn the difference between the truth and lies. The people who are standing up against this TV war know what they do because they've not forgot what came before. We killed off most the natives of America the Great. We tortured blacks with slavery, their civil rights came late. We let a madman slaughter Jews till we were forced to act. We sent more off to Vietnam than ever did come back. So turn the TV off and let me help you understand that violence is the lowest act a human being can plan. We've got to end the greed and mend the error of our ways, so one day all can live in peace and stop these killing days. And now since 9/11, when Americans were killed by terrorists who thought they did what their great Allah willed, the answer from our president sounds very much the same. Kill thousands more while waging holy war in Jesus' name. Humanity still has a great capacity for love, forgiving but remembering to learn to rise above. Mistakes and lies will make us wise, we'll keep on keeping on, until one day our dream of peace is more than just a song. Until one day our dream of peace is here and war is gone.
The Path We Take by Terri Roben. Thank you very much.